Lord of Mystery, The Return of the Stars Chapter 91 to 100. Is it the Nameless One again? The lamp god's mind was slightly moved, but then he felt relieved. Before, he had suspected that the Nameless One would have something to do with him, but after hearing what the Mother Tree of Desire said, he understood that the Nameless One had nothing to do with him. If it was related, even if he was sealed in the wishing lamp, he would have a vague feeling about this matter, and it would be impossible for him not to notice it at all. Destiny. The Ring of Fate. If it was him, the Mother Tree of Desire should know him. After all, he was also eyeing this place and was also entrenched outside the starry sky. If it wasn't the Ring of Fate, then it should be his enemy. The lamp god was a little gloating, and he was looking forward to the Ring of Fate turning over in this matter. It would be so interesting to claim to be the master of fate, but in the end he was teased by fate. Except for those who are related to fate, no one can find the location of that thing. Instead of looking for it, it is better to wait for the arrival of the fate node, and it will naturally appear in the field of vision. The lamp god simply made a suggestion. Anyway, he did not have the ability to find it. The Mother Tree of Desire looked at Hasta. Do you know where that thing is? Fate is in love with the land of hope. Hasta thought about it and decided to give some dry goods, otherwise the Mother Tree of Desire and the lamp god would doubt his ability. If that thing is really a gift from fate, then even if they tell them that the thing is in Backland, the Mother Tree of Desire and the lamp god will not be able to find it. He just confirmed from the Mother Tree of Desire that the golden box is related to the King in Yellow. He just had some doubts before. Now it seems that the connection between him and the King in Yellow is getting deeper and deeper. This is not a good thing. Backland. The lamp god obviously knows more about the real world, and quickly reacted to understand that the Land of Hope refers to the metropolis of Backland. Except for the Mercury Snake of Ouroboros, who has some hope, no one else can get that thing. The lamp god smiled. He was a little curious about the so-called gift of fate, but he didn't care much. He just wanted to return to the starry sky as soon as possible and didn't want to cause any more trouble for himself. Who can fully see through fate? Isn't the Ring of Fate still trapped in fate? The Mother Tree of Desire sighed, and was not very interested in this gift of fate. Because he knew very well that with the wisdom of the god Ea, he could not get the favor of fate in Backland. It is very likely that he will be beaten by fate. Hasta chuckled and said, "Witches die of love, hunters die of loyalty, and those who spy on fate will eventually be controlled by fate. Tisk, if you were more powerful at the beginning, you might be able to pull that witch into your camp." The lamp god's lazy tone revealed a hint of sarcasm. The Mother Tree of Desire said calmly, "They have always been consistent in maintaining the original barrier." That's hard to say. Chaos and madness are eternal, even for gods. Otherwise, you couldn't devour the bound god, and the fallen mother goddess couldn't pollute Rissel. The power of the original barrier was still very strong at that time, and the impact we could cause was limited. It's because we can't be united. The seven gods are much more determined than you in choosing this camp. Not all beings can retain their sanity. In the depths of the starry sky where it is difficult for anyone to reach, battles between outer gods are not uncommon. There are not many beings who can possess wisdom and clarity and calm down to plan for the end of the world. Chaos and madness are the main themes of this universe. The lamp god laughed and said, "In the end, it's not that your abilities are limited." The Mother Tree of Desire looked at the lamp god quietly for a while and said, "When the mysterious was rampant in the starry sky, you also behaved very incompetently." The lamp god snorted twice and stopped provoking. It was really impossible to talk about this day. Hasta said with a smile, "Let's stop here for this gathering. It's better to send the Jinn and the Mother Tree of Desire away first. If they expect him to bring up a topic to liven up the atmosphere, he won't have much information to reveal." The Jinn and the Mother Tree of Desire had no objections and let the two chains of order lead them out of the Hall of Stars. This time, Asta's attention was mainly focused on the chain of order that led the Jinn. When the Jinn was sent into the wishing lamp, the chain of order did not disappear immediately, but emitted starlight and touched Bernadette, who was guarding on the side. A new connection was established. Asta did not communicate with Bernadette immediately, but took back the chain of order to restore everything to normal. In the house built by P-vines on the clouds, Bernadette looked solemn, staring at the wishing lamp that she had completely sealed. Recently, every 15 days or so, the starry sky would appear, leading the Jinn to the gathering, and then sending the Jinn back to the wishing lamp. Apart from this, there was no other change. This also gave her a new guess about the so-called Lord of the Stars. This mysterious being did not seem to have any intention of helping the lamp god escape. Otherwise, with the ability he showed, he could have helped the lamp god break the seal long ago. But it was just a guess. She would not use words like kindness to describe this kind of existence. She thoroughly checked the seal of the wishing lamp again, and only left the hut after finding no problems. In the past, she still had the desire to communicate with the Jinn god. After the incident with the evil god Sia, she understood that the Jinn god had sold her to the Mother Tree of Desire. Therefore, she was too lazy to listen to the Jinn's lies to fool herself. Walking on the clouds, with a slight move of her right hand, several P-vines stretched out and intertwined into a gently swaying swing in front of her. The word, swing, is the name given by her father Russell to this thing that looks like a seat but shakes. Sit on the swing, hold the P-vines on both sides with both hands, and use gentle force to make your whole body sway with the swing. This was a toy she loved to play with when she was a child. Her extremely respectable father stood behind her with a smile and kindly, pushing the swing again and again, pushing her to grow up little by little. The swing is still there, but the person pushing it has long since disappeared. Only the little girl sitting on the swing is left, growing into a mysterious queen whose true identity is difficult for people to pry into. In a flash, the worries seemed to be thrown away. Suddenly, she felt herself sway slightly, and the starry sky changed in front of her eyes. The starry sky is bright and the stars are twinkling. Here, there is no light of the crimson moon. This place belongs to the stars. Lord of the Stars, Bernadette's heart sank. Her face was solemn, but she was not panicked. She knew that there was a huge gap between herself and such a mysterious existence, and resistance was just a desperate struggle. The first time the stars appeared near the wishing lamp, she had a premonition of such a day. Not even the Jinn could resist the call of the Lord of the Stars, let alone her. Become a believer in the stars and you will be protected by them. A voice descended from the depths of the starry sky, and in the bright starlight, a magnificent palace loomed. Bernadette looked up, still sitting on the swing, making no unnecessary movements. Before she could say anything, a scene played out among the stars. It is the scene where the Jinn tells how he plans to plot against himself. The stars are the direction you always need to pursue. There was another majestic sound, and all the surrounding phenomena suddenly disappeared. In the starry sky above our heads, the crimson moon still shines high, and the stars are dim and dim, far less dazzling than before. As if everything just now was just an illusion. Become a believer in the stars. Bernadette murmured softly, her eyes showing confusion, and then she laughed to herself. The Jinn and the Mother Tree of Desire teamed up to plot against her, and now, even this extremely mysterious Lord of the Stars also extended an olive branch to her. She is like the protagonist in this legendary story, belonging to this turbulent era. Even I don't know what's special about me. Bernadette sighed and continued to swing on the swing, looking disappointed. She did not think that the Lord of the Stars was deceiving herself. Based on her understanding of the Jinn, It was normal for the jinn to make such a choice. What puzzles her is, what does the Lord of the Stars value in him? Is an extraordinary who is barely even close to reaching sequence 2 worthy of his special oracle and calculation? Apostles of the Stars. This is to make yourself his favored one. After thinking for a long time, she still couldn't understand what happened tonight. We can only take one step at a time. As for whether you want to become an apostle of the stars, it all depends on whether you need it in the future. If this Lord of the Stars can really satisfy all his needs, then becoming his favored one is not without negotiation. Before that, she needed to know more about what kind of existence this Lord of the Stars was. The Hall of Stars. Hasta, whose spiritual power was completely drained, returned to his original appearance, closing his eyes and leaning on his seat to rest. Just establishing a connection with Bernadette consumes a lot of his spiritual power, and the remaining spiritual power can only support him to make this communication. At present, he is still unable to talk to Bernadette for a long time, let alone communicate in other aspects. The matter of being promoted to Sequence 7 Briber must be advanced as soon as possible. As for Bernadette, there is a long way to go. We will take the next step when we can communicate normally. Phew, go offline and sleep. Hasta exited the Hall of Stars, pulled up the quilt, and soon fell asleep. When he woke up in the morning, Asta was in a pretty good mood. Last night's party allowed him to learn many secrets from the Mother Tree of Desire. Especially the golden box thing. The attempt to guide Bernadette also went smoothly. I could really communicate with Bernadette alone without the prying eyes of the jinn. This gave him a direction. He has been worried about how to deal with the matter between Mr. Door and the fallen Mother Goddess. If the relationship between Mr. Men and the fallen Mother Goddess is regarded as the relationship between Bernadette and the jinn, can she try to communicate with Mr. Men while isolating the fallen Mother Goddess? Or simply drag Mr. Men to the Hall of Stars for a meeting as a fallen Mother Goddess? He had this idea when he first arrived at the Palace of Stars. The exchange with Bernadette last night gave him a vague glimpse of the key points. But he would not try it easily, at least he would have to wait until he was promoted to a high rank. Take a shower and go downstairs to enjoy some delicious food. Butler Neil sent 2 invitations, one from Mrs. Germani and one from Earl Richard, who lived nearby. There is no need to think about where to go for the meeting. At around 9 o'clock, Hasta arrived at Earl Richard's house in a carriage. He originally wanted to walk here directly, but considering that he had to go to the law office in the afternoon, it was more convenient to take a carriage. Earl Richard welcomed his arrival and came to the door to greet him. When he entered Earl Richard's house, Hasta silently turned on his spiritual vision and scanned around to make sure there was nothing unusual before following Earl Richard through the door and into the hall. Earl Richard said awkwardly, "After the last lesson, I seriously studied a lot of occult knowledge. I also specially invited the Bishop of St. Samuel's Church to come to my place and asked him to help perform an exorcism and blessing for the entire house. How much does it cost to exorcise evil spirits and give a blessing? It is a donation, an act of piety to the goddess, and cannot be measured simply by money." Hasta smiled and did not continue to ask. According to his estimate, the cost of hiring a bishop was about 500 gold pounds. Earl Richard is obviously richer than himself, and he has recently converted to worship the goddess of the night. He may donate 1,000 gold pounds to round up the figure. It is still easiest for the church to make money. After Hasta chatted with Earl Richard for a few words, he asked him the purpose of inviting him as a guest today. He didn't believe that Earl Richard just came here to thank him for helping him last time. Earl Richard lowered his voice and said embarrassedly, "I dreamed about my lord again recently." Hasta immediately became alert, knowing that Earl Richard was not a simple guy. It's only been more than a month since the last big toad, right? Now there is another lord. Even if he is really the one favored by God, The gods will not live in his dreams every night and guide him forward, right? Earl Richard knew what Hastur was thinking from his expression, and hurriedly explained. You misunderstood. This time the Lord did not talk to me, he just showed a vague shadow. Is it another toad? Or is it another small animal? Earl Richard was stunned for a while, then smiled bitterly and said, this time it's not an animal, he is the Lord, the God who gives all living creatures sleep. Although he did not want to undermine Earl Richard's faith, Hastur still adhered to the principle of honesty and said, is there a possibility that the gods are not so free? But I think that's the Lord. People are very good at self-deception, especially when it comes to dreams. Maybe you just dream about the so-called Lord because you think too much. Quote. Earl Richard remained silent. He also knew that this matter was too unbelievable, so he came to Hastur to discuss it. Greylant is concentrating on researching some medicines recently. You can go to him to get some soothing medicines to try. This will ensure your sleep quality. Thank you for the offer. Earl Richard could only smile bitterly and nodded. After thinking for a while, Hastur said seriously, in mysticism, don't keep thinking about things about gods. This can easily affect people's minds and eventually lead to contamination without even realizing it. If you don't want to attract another one, if you're a big toad, try not to think too much. Earl Richard expressed his gratitude for such heartfelt advice and left Hastur to have lunch at home before watching Hastur leave. If I don't pursue the gods, wouldn't it be meaningless for me to step into the extraordinary world? Earl Richard sighed and decided to let nature take its course. Maybe this time the Lord was really a kind God. In the afternoon, Asta came to the law office in Hillston District. Inside the law firm, Lecturer Fowlin is very busy. With the newly opened business and the dozens of cases, he needs to sort out a lot of information. The other two lawyers have already gone out to handle the cases. The arrival of Asta made Lecturer Fowlin's eyes light up, and he quickly pulled Asta to help organize the information. Asta asked curiously, why not recruit more lawyers? It's too wasteful to let lawyers do things like sorting out information. I'm going to recruit a few assistants. Fair enough. He was busy at the law office until 6 o'clock, and then Asta escaped by having dinner. He couldn't maintain as much energy as Lecturer Foulin about this kind of thing. Before leaving, he picked up a case and planned to go home to study it. After returning home, Greylant had someone deliver a letter. The letter said that he had developed a drug that could prevent drunkenness, and asked him to come over when he had time. This was good news. It also mentioned that this Friday, which is tomorrow, he was going to invite Audrey, Furs, and Hugh to have an extraordinary party together. After reading the letter, Asta wrote a reply, saying that he would be there on time. According to the time, Miss Audrey should have become a spectator, as well as the future fantasy dog. Susie has already entered the extraordinary world. Should he speed up and find an extraordinary animal that suits his heart as soon as possible? After thinking about it, he felt that it would be more appropriate to raise an extraordinary cat. Cats have the potential to find out information, similar to private detectives, and he can let it help him collect information in the future. As for which extraordinary path the cat should choose, he will wait until he meets a cat he likes, and then choose according to its personality. Asta asked butler Neil where he could buy a suitable cat. After understanding, he looked at the time and it was a bit late. The next day, Asta took a carriage and went straight to the place that butler Neil mentioned. This is a trading market located in the East District, where many cats and dogs can be sold. And there are even more unique pets such as lizards, snakes, spiders, etc. Asta did not go directly to the place where cats are sold, but walked slowly from stall to stall. If he met other very suitable pets, he might give up raising cats and cultivate other pets instead. Unfortunately, after a round of walking, he did not find a particularly suitable pet, so he went to a specialty store that sells pet cats. The owner was very enthusiastic to introduce him and popularize a lot of knowledge about raising pet cats. Hasta kept a gentle smile on his face and listened silently. His eyes swept across the pet cats. He frowned slightly, not very satisfied. He only had 3 requirements for pet cats. One is that they must be beautiful and pretty. Beautiful little things are pleasing to the eye. The second is that they must be smart and sensitive. If the IQ is too low and too stupid, it is estimated that the brain will burst directly when taking the potion. The third is that the personality must be good. The types of bravery and irritability are not considered. He didn't want to have a little guy who would always spit out sweet words around him. The pet cats here are still more inclined to ordinary working-class families. Although the price is not expensive, the quality is just average. Hasta then went to several pet stores, but he didn't find a little guy that suited his taste. He could only give up temporarily. It's better to let fate take it. Or ask Miss Audrey, she may have a deeper understanding in this regard. In the evening, at Growlent's house, Audrey came in with a brisk pace, and her happy mood made the smile on her face more charming. Following the servants to the party's study, all the party members were already there, waiting for her. Audrey came in and greeted them one by one, and then sat opposite Hasta, next to Furs. Growlent asked curiously, "Audrey, have you encountered anything happy recently?" "Ah, is it so obvious? It's just taking the potion and becoming a real audience. Audrey, you can't be too proud." Audrey muttered to herself and smiled. "Well, Susie, take it out to play in the afternoon. It has caused a lot of interesting things. I also want to have a puppy like Susie." Glennett smiled and praised. Looking up at Susie lying at Audrey's feet, his expression stunned for a moment. I don't know if it was his illusion, he could feel that Susie seemed to have become particularly smart today. Audrey's right foot kicked Susie's belly slightly, asking her to pay attention and not to arouse Glennett's suspicion. Susie turned around slowly, her tail wagging in the direction of Glennett, her head lying on her 2 front legs, her ears quietly drooping. Glennett retracted his gaze, Audrey smiled, and quickly put herself into the state of the audience. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Hasta also looked over and took a look at Susie. Susie, who was lying on the ground, stood up with her fur stretched tight. She looked around for a while, then shook her body and turned to the other side where Hasta couldn't see her, and continued to lie on the ground to rest. She was really perceptive, but why did she feel that Susie was afraid of her? She didn't do anything to it that would anger the heavens and the people, right? Although he had thought about finding a male dog for it before, he finally gave up the idea and didn't take action. Hasta was slightly surprised, retracted his gaze, and looked at Audrey tonight. When Audrey just stepped into the door of the study, he realized that Audrey had become a Beander, a Sequence 9 audience. A way that would affect the fairness of the game if it was not taken seriously. I have recently developed a lot of drugs that are beneficial to the human body, and it's just right for you to taste them. Growlent said, opening the box in front of him, and there were 7 or 8 bottles of unknown drugs lying inside. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Growlent straightened his back and began to introduce his gains during this period one by one with a confident smile. For example, the body-building pills can be taken even if you are not sick to keep fit and can effectively replenish blood and chi. Alcohol-repellent medicine, which is a kind of medicine that Hasta had guided him to study before, is in the form of a light green liquid and smells of pungent grass and wood. There are also brain tonifying pills, which are said to enhance memory and improve intelligence. Then there are some special medicines that can be applied to wounds, which can effectively stop bleeding and regenerate flesh. Zio is more interested in this kind of medicine. In the process of executing arbitration, She occasionally fights with people, and bumps and bruises are inevitable. Audrey and Furs are interested in one of the medicines that can effectively repel mosquitoes. This thing is in the form of powder. It only needs to be ignited to emit wisps of smoke. When reptiles such as mosquitoes smell the smoke, it is like drinking poison and they will soon lose their lives. Asta's heart moved slightly. Isn't this a modern mosquito coil? Unexpectedly, Grellant also has the spirit of a scientist. If this thing can be mass-produced and the price is not expensive, it should be very popular. Maybe it can be used to do a small business and increase a little extra income. As the host of tonight, Grellant is very satisfied. He also gave Asta a look, indicating that he still has something good to show. Looking at Grellant's proud look, Asta immediately understood what the so-called good things refer to. That should be a medicine that can effectively maintain Grellant's dignity as a man. Asta thought for a while and asked, "Is there any medicine that can treat middle-aged baldness?" He asked for Professor Wayne. Recently, he found that Professor Wayne has already had this tendency. "Not yet, I will definitely be able to develop it in the future." Grellant said that this is not a big problem. Asta looked at him deeply and felt that when Grellant developed this medicine, he would probably use it himself. The ability of the pharmacist is really enviable, Furs sighed. In her opinion, pharmacists have great prospects. As long as they are good at it, they can definitely make a lot of money. It's really good to live a life where you can make money by making medicine at home. It's just average. Grellant seemed modest, but his eyebrows were almost raised to the sky. Audrey silently took in all their subtle expressions. Even if she was not a spectator, she could see a general idea of Grellant's character. Miss Furs looked very short of money, with a lazy posture, as if she was not interested in anything. She should be someone who likes to stay at home all year round. Miss Yu, she looks short, but she is not as energetic as a man like Grellant. Her personality should be impulsive and irritable. I heard that she is also an arbitrator, and she probably often fights with others. Mr. Asta, looks very quiet, always keeps a kind smile on his face, and his eyes seem to contain a pool of water, making it impossible to accurately see his depth, and it is difficult to read his mind through the eyes, the window of the soul. It seems hard to see anything from Mr. Asta. Although he behaves casually, once you observe him carefully, you will find that he hides himself tightly and it is difficult to really see anything. Mr. Asta doesn't know that he is already a spectator, so he deliberately makes a response to his observation, right? Then Mr. Asta should also be a Beander, right? His sequence may be higher than mine, but he doesn't like to show off his abilities like Grellant does. Such a personality is in line with her imagination of a true Beander. Facing Audrey's vague observation, Asta was calm on the surface, but sighed in his heart. Sitting opposite an audience is really a tormenting thing. If you are not careful, your true thoughts will be seen through. Especially Audrey has just become a spectator and likes to look at others from the perspective of an audience. After thinking about it, he was ready to bring up the topic to attract Audrey's attention so that she wouldn't have to observe him secretly. I have become a Beander some time ago. Audrey, Furs, and Zio were not surprised, they had already guessed this. Glorint's reaction was quite strong. He asked, "Asta, what Beander path did you choose?" "I am now a Sequence 9 lawyer. I just opened a law firm in Hillston District some time ago." Grellant was stunned for a moment and asked stupidly, "Do I have to open a law firm to become a lawyer?" "I know this question." Audrey was excited. A miniature Audrey couldn't wait to raise her hand. She stood up and shook her arms for fear that people would not see her. At the second gathering, Mr. Fool told her and Mr. Hanged Man. It's not about mastering, it's about digestion. It's not about digging, it's about acting. The name of the potion is not only a symbol, but also an image, and it is also the key to digestion. Take Mr. Hasta becoming a lawyer as an example. A lawyer is not only the name of a potion, but also the key to digesting the potion. Opening a law firm is to better play the role of a real lawyer as a lawyer, so as to speed up the digestion of the potion. This is very advanced mystical knowledge. Even Mr. Hanged Man, who has rich experience, was shocked by it and owed Mr. Fool a favor. Mr. Hasta actually knows such advanced mystical knowledge. His knowledge is really profound. Hasta smiled and said, "My teacher is Professor Wayne of Backland University. He is a professor of law. I learned a lot from him, so I took this opportunity to open a law firm. I think becoming a lawyer can deepen my understanding of the extraordinary path of lawyers." He did not mention the role-playing method directly, but only mentioned it implicitly. So that's how it is. No wonder when I started to develop drugs, my mind would be particularly clear and comfortable. I would no longer have headaches or hear strange things like muttering. Glarant felt as if he had suddenly realized something. Audrey wanted to tell him that this was the key to digesting the potion, and this was the key to being promoted to a higher sequence. This was the role-playing method. But she still tried to restrain her impulse and pretended to be curious. So the lawyer path is to become a lawyer, then the pharmacist path is not to become a doctor? She looked at Furs and Zio, letting them think for themselves. Zio thought for a while and said, "I have always strictly required myself as an arbitrator." Furs frowned slightly. She was in sequence 9, an apprentice. Was she going to be a real apprentice? Being an apprentice, isn't that too hard? As a novelist, she often goes out to collect materials, and she knows the life of apprentices at the bottom of various industries. That kind of life is simply too hard. Glelant asked again, "Hasta, why did you choose to be a lawyer?" "In my opinion, the profession of lawyer is people who understand and master the rules and order. They have the right to interpret the law. Glelant, don't you think such people are cool?" Hasta once again took this topic to remind Glelant, Furs, and Hugh. As for whether they can understand it, that is their own business. Furs and Hugh were thoughtful, and Audrey looked naive, saying, "What are you talking about? Why can't I understand anything?" As for Glelant, he didn't realize what kind of message was contained in that sentence. Instead, he laughed and said, "I still think the ability of a pharmacist is cooler. The ability of a pharmacist can be used to help others treat diseases, and you don't look like a doctor who can cure diseases and save lives." Hasta still specifically helped Glelant. After all, he was the one who led him into the door. Although his understanding was not good, he didn't give up treatment. "I'm not short of money. There is a doctor at home. It's more interesting for me to concentrate on researching new drugs." Hasta saw that Gralant's solution process was wrong, but the result was correct, so he didn't say anything. After this topic was revealed, Zio talked about some things he had heard or experienced during this period. Among the 5 people present, she had the richest experience. After all, she was an arbitrator who was dedicated to fighting on the front line. She also talked about the extraordinary party held by Mr. A, saying that Mr. A suddenly disappeared some time ago, and the extraordinary party could not be held as scheduled. But a few days ago, there was news that Mr. A was back and was preparing to hold an extraordinary party again. Audrey was moved. She wanted to see what other extraordinary parties looked like, and how the extraordinary people there compared with Mr. Fool and Mr. Hanged Man. Glelant also wanted to attend. He was unable to go with Hasta last time, and he had been thinking about going once to make up for his regret. Hasta kept his distance from him. Although he was sure that Mr. A had no ill will towards him, he still didn't want to get too close to Mr. A. Who knows if Mr. A will go crazy suddenly, so it's better to stay away from him. Soon, Audrey, Glelant, and Hugh decided to go to this extraordinary party. Furs and Hasta chose to stay at home and keep their distance. Audrey asked curiously, "Is Mr. Hasta not interested in this extraordinary party?" Hugh covered his mouth and chuckled. He is afraid of being noticed by Mr. A. Furs also added, in fact, Mr. A is a good person. There has never been any problem in so many extraordinary parties. The story between the two handsome men makes people blush, but the excitement makes people a little unable to stop. Furs blushed and quickly gathered his mind, no longer fantasizing about the story between Asta and Mr. A. Asta just smiled and didn't explain anything. After a few people chatted for a while, Zio glanced at Furs and coughed lightly, saying, "We have recently collected 2 more manuscripts of Emperor Russell." Audrey immediately became interested. This is something that even the mysterious Mr. Fool is interested in. They just call it a manuscript. It seems that they don't know that the so-called manuscript is a diary. I should also collect some of Russell's diaries, so that I can pay off my debt to Mr. Fool. I can also exchange some knowledge and help from Mr. Fool through Russell's diary. Before she asked, Asta smiled and said, "Okay, 50 gold pounds for 1 manuscript, and the purchase price remains unchanged." Audrey slightly widened her eyes. She didn't expect that Mr. Asta was also collecting Russell's diary. "How can I bid for Zio and Furs to help me find Russell's diary? If I offer a higher price, wouldn't it be equivalent to stealing business from Mr. Asta? I can't do this kind of thing. But I also need Russell's diary, and I can't waste this channel in vain." Audrey couldn't help but puff up her cheeks, but soon realized that it was not very decent. After thinking for a while, she felt that she could discuss it with Mr. Asta privately in the name of learning and discussion. She didn't necessarily need the original manuscript. As long as the content on it was correct, she could just ask for a few copies of Russell's diary. But Mr. Asta offered 50 gold pounds to buy 1 copy. Is it really okay for her to take advantage of Mr. Asta for nothing? Mr. Asta taught her a lot about mysticism. She was not without money. She could buy a few Russell diaries from Mr. Asta at a higher price. For example, 100 gold pounds per copy. The price was a little expensive, but she didn't need to buy every Russell diary. Occasionally, she could use the method of learning and discussion to get a few Russell diaries for free. If it was just a few copies, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Audrey looked at Asta with a guilty conscience. Seeing that he was completing the transaction with Hugh and didn't pay attention to her, she breathed a sigh of relief. After they completed the transaction, she smiled and said, "Mr. Asta, I am also very interested in the manuscript left by Emperor Russell. Can I ask you for advice on related knowledge in the future?" Asta also smiled and said, "Of course you are welcome." The 2 people who achieved their respective goals had particularly bright smiles on their faces. Grelland asked curiously, "Can you understand the manuscript left by Emperor Russell?" "I can't understand it." Audrey and Asta answered this question at the same time. Asta added, "I have always been a follower of Emperor Russell's knowledge. I also admire the influence of Emperor Russell on this era." Audrey also added, "I always think you are weird." Grelland muttered softly and said nothing more. Asta and Audrey tacitly did not mention this topic again, and turned to talk about other things. Then, Asta shared some relatively simple mystical knowledge. Before leaving, Audrey was not far from Hastur, and she said, "Mr. Hastur, I think the original manuscript left by Emperor Russell looks like a whole diary torn into pages." Mr. Hastur taught her a lot about mysticism, and she felt that she could reveal a little bit of high-end knowledge to Mr. Hastur. It was definitely not because she wanted to show how smart she was in front of Mr. Hastur. Well, this mentality cannot be completely ruled out. Sometimes she also wants to be the one who stands at the top of the IQ and looks down on others. She wants to see Mr. Hastur's surprised expression. Well, let Mr. Hastur feel a little shock. "Hey, did Miss Audrey find it too?" Asta's question made Audrey's head empty for a while. This reaction is different from what she expected. She forced a smile and said, "Does Mr. Hastur think so too?" "Well, I have always had this guess. This is one of the results of my research on Emperor Rissel's manuscript. It turns out that I have accidentally figured out this secret. Miss Audrey is really smart." Audrey just smiled and said nothing at this compliment. Yes, she is really smart. She naively thought that she could occupy the peak of IQ in front of Mr. Hastur for a while. I didn't expect that the clown was actually herself. Alas, so, don't use the field you are not good at to win applause and flowers. Asta admired Audrey's little expression for a while, and continued. Miss Audrey is so interested in Emperor Rissel. Does your family also collect Rissel's diary? Quote. Audrey was stunned for a moment, and quickly reacted and said, "We can study together." She was afraid that Asta would suddenly propose to buy Rissel's diary in her home. If so, she would be very embarrassed and didn't know how to respond. That's good. Asta smiled at Audrey and felt a little happier. Before getting in the car, Audrey thought about it, but still didn't directly ask Asta about his recent financial situation. Just smiled and said, "I have some spare money recently and want to invest. Does Mr. Asta have any better suggestions? The mosquito repellent powder developed by Growlant tonight should have a good market and will be a good investment project. But I have a lot of spare money. Growlant's business should not cost 20,000 gold pounds, right? I'll think about it after I go back." Audrey showed a distressed expression, and then rode away in the carriage under Asta's slightly shocked and envious eyes. In the carriage, Audrey quietly waved her fist, a little proud. It turns out that Mr. Asta's financial situation is not very good. But soon, she felt embarrassed and her cheeks flushed. In order to save a little bit of the embarrassment just now, she actually learned to tease Mr. Asta's financial situation. And deliberately admired Mr. Asta's shocked expression. "Audrey, you have changed. You would not do this before. You must change. You can't be so silly in the future." Audrey reflected deeply on what happened just now. But after a while, she muttered, "But I can't beat Mr. Asta in other aspects except money. He looks about the same age as me." Study. Asta sat at the desk and read the 2 newly acquired Russell diaries. After reading, he put the 2 diaries together with the previous ones and locked them in the drawer. Now Audrey has understood the importance of Russell's diary, and she should start to reveal a little information to Klein. She took out a pen and paper, thought for a while, and began to write in the style of Russell's diary. On August 12, I attended a dinner party hosted by Viscount Reed. Viscount Reed, who had drunk a lot of wine at the dinner party, kept showing off how good he was in that aspect. It was not until I saw his wife followed a baron out from the depths of the back garden with a red face that I realized that people like to brag about things that they themselves do not have. On August 15, I heard an interesting thing from Mr. Men. It was a sealed object, an extremely magical pen. It could write scripts and make the stories in the scripts play out in reality. Isn't this the otherworldly version of the magic pen Ma Liang? Mr. Men also specifically told me that if you often encounter coincidences, accidents in your daily life, you should be careful whether you are written into the script by that pen and become a character in someone else's story. On August 19, I took Green and Edward to enjoy the performance of the song and dance troupe. Well, it was an adult version of the song and dance performance, which was very shocking. After writing these 3 items, Asta stopped writing, carefully reviewed them, and then made up 2 more short stories, filling the entire sheet of paper. Then he put down his pen and admired his masterpiece. The other 4 stories were not important, only the second one, which happened on August 15, was more important. That was the first reminder and guidance to Klein with the help of Mr. Men. He did not directly write that the pen was called 008, but was prepared to wait until the next few times to make it clear. This is also in line with the characteristics of the fragmented records of Rissel's diary. As for stigmatizing Russell, does Russell's romantic behavior still need him to slander? For example, the classic sentence, "The taste of witches is really good." It comes from Russell's personal experience. The style of Intis and the absurdity between the nobles are fully reflected in Russell. If there is a chance in the future, Asta is also going to write a diary full of the famous saying that the taste of witches is really good. It is estimated that it will bring a great shock to the young Mr. Fool. Asta just thought about it, and it was difficult to hide the smile on the corners of his mouth. He could already imagine Klein's disgusted and helpless expression. These are all things for the future. For now, it is better to stop here and continue to imitate when necessary. Asta thought about it, blew the ink on the copy of Russell's diary, and then took out the original manuscript left by Russell and put it on the table for comparison. Well, his handwriting is much better than Russell's, and you can tell it's a copy at a glance. But for Miss Audrey, the difference between the two is not big, as long as there is content that fills a piece of paper. When she went to Saphira Castle for a meeting, she just remembered the shapes of these words and wrote them in her own handwriting, which had nothing to do with her. After confirming that there were no omissions, Asta put the imitation of Russell's diary on the top and locked them together in the drawer. Having completed a big task, Asta looked at the time, went to the bathroom to take a bath, and then went back to the room to rest. The next day until 8 o'clock in the evening, Audrey had not come to share her experience with Russell's diary, which made Asta a little disappointed. Instead, Sharon appeared in his study, which made him feel much better instantly. This time, Sharon was still hiding in the mirror, and Asta could only sit on the sofa opposite to communicate with her. Asta regretted putting a sofa in front of the mirror. If she hadn't been so well prepared, Miss Sharon should have chatted with him face to face, instead of hiding in the mirror and only hearing the voice. The people of the Rose School have left Backland. Marich and I will need to go out for a while. How can I contact you when something happens? You can contact me by writing a letter. Asta pretended that he didn't quite understand what he meant, and asked curiously, "I don't know where you are, so how can I send the letter to you?" In the mirror, Sharon showed her figure, staring at Asta with her blue eyes, without exposing his half-hearted acting. Reaching out and throwing a copper whistle to Asta from the mirror, she said calmly, "You are already a Sequence 8 barbarian, and you have mastered psychic vision. As long as you blow this copper whistle, you can summon my own spiritual messenger. Write the letter and give it directly to it, and it will automatically bring the letter to me." It's been a long time since I said such a long content at once. Sharon glanced at Asta, who coughed guiltily and pretended that he had fully understood. "Acting, you always have to act the whole set. It's so convenient. I also want to summon a messenger of my own." Facing Asta's undisguised thoughts, Sharon knew that he was waiting for her to take the initiative to teach him how to summon a messenger. There will be a chance in the future. Asta was stunned for a moment and blinked. Wasn't her thoughts obvious enough? Sharon pretended not to see Asta's gesture and said lightly, "Your sequence is too low now. Wait until you are promoted to Sequence 7. Sharon, you have also learned bad things now. I learned it from you." Asta sighed. Who made him not act seriously just now? Before trying to summon a messenger, you'd better learn some relevant knowledge. Be careful and don't make mistakes, Sharon still kindly reminded. Although the ritual of summoning a messenger from the spirit world is not complicated, there are always some unlucky people who encounter uncontrollable accidents, leading to tragedies. I'm not very familiar with this aspect. I need an extraordinary person who is proficient in this aspect to teach me. You can go and ask Marich. After speaking, Sharon's figure disappeared from the mirror. Asta opened his spiritual vision and scanned the area, and found that Sharon had completely left. You should have told me not to tell the truth at the beginning. Asta smiled helplessly. He still knew about the knowledge of summoning spirit world messengers, but he didn't want to try it now. Firstly, among the people he knew, only Sharon needed to be contacted, and the messenger was not very useful. Secondly, he was worried about causing unnecessary changes. Klein had Saphira Castle, so he could attract an angel to be his messenger. He also had the Star Hall, which was no less powerful than Saphira Castle. Once the summoning ceremony was held, something might come. With his current Sequence 8 strength, he could not suppress possible accidents. If he summoned a malicious spirit world messenger, he only needed to punch him, and he would probably say goodbye to this world. It would be better to wait until he was promoted to the middle sequence before trying to summon a messenger. Well, this was also because he was afraid that summoning a messenger that was too powerful would scare Miss Sharon. In this regard, he was still very considerate. Hester thought a lot, stood up and walked to the window, opened it and let in some fresh air. Tonight, Backland was still shrouded in the light of the crimson moon, and the stars in the sky were emitting faint and dense light. After looking at the stars for a while, Hester couldn't help but think of the Hall of Stars. If the gaze of the outer god in the starry sky can directly penetrate the initial barrier, then is the gaze of the king in yellow staring in his direction. He is using a commanding bird's-eye view, watching himself step by step into the script he has written. It was like he was sitting in the Palace of Stars, looking at the jinn from a bird's-eye view. Each star represents an alien god. Hester somewhat understood how Luo Ji felt when he raised his head and looked up at the stars in the dark forest, having just understood the laws of the dark forest. Fear and powerlessness. It was like an ant raising its head and staring at a giant that was far beyond its reach and rival. Their situation may be worse than that of ants. After all, the ants still have a chance to climb on the giants, and they are separated from the stars by a bright starry sky. Difficult to cross. It would be nice to find a star that represents the king in yellow. This way I can also observe the daily life of the king in yellow from a bird's eye view. It's a pity that every time I get promoted, the stars that light up in the Hall of Stars are not chosen by me. Hester thought for a while and closed the window again. Although this is Queens, you still have to be careful about Mr. A knocking on the window in the middle of the night. Especially during this time, Mr. A became active again. In the early morning, after breakfast, Hester took a carriage to a club. Gordon's Club, which Greco recommended to him, is equivalent to a modern fight club. It mainly allows you to practice some fighting skills. Although he has been promoted to barbarian for some time, he has not systematically learned any force-generating techniques. Fighting relies purely on brute force. Although this fits the role of a barbarian, he also has to learn how to protect himself when facing some truly powerful characters. For example, which part of the body is more deadly to hit, how to dodge when someone punches you, how to counterattack when you are attacked from behind. There is still a lot to learn. And proper exercise can also tap into the stronger potential of the barbarian body. The only drawback is that the annual fee for this club is 100 gold pounds, and you need someone to recommend you to join. It is equivalent to an exclusive circle for nobles. The instructors here are all retired officers from the kingdom's front lines, and their level is quite high. Asta paid the fee and attracted the attention of many people as soon as he entered the club. Thin, with not much flesh on his arms, and a good-looking charlatan. This is the first impression most people have of him. I've obviously grown a lot during this time. Hester felt sorry for himself in his heart. A tall instructor with a shaved head and exposed arm muscles took the initiative to introduce Asta to the basic situation of the club. Members enjoy high rights here and can freely choose an instructor to teach them. They can change it at any time if they feel it is not suitable. Every time you come to exercise, it is a one-on-one service, and there will not be a situation where one instructor teaches many members at the same time. In addition to fighting courses, there are also firearms courses here. Basically all the firearms in the Kingdom of Lotm are available here, with unlimited bullets and no additional payment required. As for basic things like drinks and food, they are all provided by the club for free. In addition, there are many other conveniences, but Hasta does not understand them in depth. He directly signed up for 2 courses, one in fighting and one in firearms. As for using equipment to exercise his own muscles, he really has no idea. He is very satisfied with his current body and does not need to develop into a muscular man. The person responsible for teaching him is called Instructor Hyman, codenamed Moray. From his own introduction, he is like an eel in the sea. On the surface, it looks like a delicious ordinary eel, but it is actually an electric eel with powerful attacks. Moray eel, cough. Instructor Hyman's teaching is very strict, and at first glance, it is a style that has been trained in the military for many years. Hasta's basic skills are very poor, so this kind of basic teaching suits him very well. After practicing for half an hour, Instructor Hyman asked Hasta to stop and rest first. He looked around him and said in surprise, "I didn't expect you to be so thin and weak, but your basic physical fitness is still very good. I'm not naturally very fat, so I have a lean physique." Hasta found a random excuse to cover up his problem with the strong physique of a barbarian. In the end, in order not to attract other people's attention, he only practiced for an hour and then went to practice the firearms event. If he could score 90 points in the combat class, then he couldn't even get a passing score of 60 points in the firearms class. After half an hour of theoretical lessons, he tried target shooting. Unfortunately, 5 out of 10 shots missed the target, let alone a few hits. It was obvious that he was aiming seriously, but his final result was not optimistic. Relax, be casual, and don't care too much. The more you care, the more likely it will be a slight jitter the moment you pull the trigger. Instructor Hyman looked at the empty bullet casings on the ground with some distress. If this were on the battlefield, he would like to break a bullet into 10 and shoot it. Be casual, that's just letting it happen. Hasta cursed, took a casual look, and then pulled the trigger. The bullet shot out like a meteor. It did not miss the target, but hit the 8th rein. Hasta fell into silence. That's how it should be. Your arm posture is very stable. What's missing is that mentality. Instructor Hyman was very satisfied with the result and signaled Hasta to continue practicing. This time he aimed again casually, and it was about right. Then he pulled the trigger and hit the target again, with a score of 7 reins. Instructor Hyman became more and more satisfied, and Hasta became more silent. Finally, after a lot of experiments, he came to the conclusion that his gun felt very good and he didn't need special aim. Well, the truth is that he is very suitable for random shooting. As long as he doesn't deliberately aim, his results will not be too bad. Once he takes aim seriously, the probability of missing the target is very high. In this regard, Instructor Hyman's advice is to relax, don't be nervous, be casual and practice more. After practicing until noon, Hasta stayed at the club for lunch. The dishes are rich and taste pretty good, not as good as the chef at home, but at least they are above the passing mark. The key is that lunch is free. After lunch and an hour's rest, Hasta practiced another hour of fighting class and 1 hour of firearms class, then left the club and took a carriage to the law office. Lecturer Fowlin's work efficiency is very fast, and the law firm has hired 3 new assistants, 2 men and 1 woman, all of whom are young in appearance. After asking, I found out that these 3 assistants were all students at Backland University. Fortunately, the weekly salary offered to them by Lecturer Fowlin was not low, otherwise Hasta would really have a sense of déjà vu as if the instructor asked the students to work overtime for free. In the following time, Hasta stayed with Professor Fullen, learning how to be a lawyer who could handle various matters independently. For example, when a case is entrusted to a law firm, what needs to be done first, and then what to do, instead of going directly to the court after receiving the case. The opening of the court is the result, and the important thing is the effort and the process. Understand the whole story of the case, down to the details of what time to eat, and look for effective legal basis that can stand firm in court. You may also have to look through some more obscure legal provisions to see if you can find the key to a surprise victory. It's very troublesome, but it's also very training. In just half an afternoon, Asta gained a lot. As dinner approached, Hester personally paid for a sumptuous dinner for all members of the law firm. Without drinking, 7 people spent 13 gold pounds, an average of less than £2 per person. After waiting for 3 days, Audrey finally sent the greeting card. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Earl Hall's carriage slowly arrived at the door of Asta's house. Judging from the distance between the two houses, it only takes 20 minutes by carriage, which is not too far. Audrey got off the carriage. Susie did not follow her today. She was closely accompanied by her maid, with a serious look on her face and alertness in her little eyes. Is this because he is afraid that he will abduct Audrey? Hester read the look in her eyes. It was clearly like an old father guarding against his son-in-law. That's right, I have been in frequent contact with Audrey recently. The simple and kind-hearted Audrey was Backlund's pearl, so it was normal for her to be afraid of being abducted by herself. After all, I am young, outstanding in appearance, unmarried, and have a good reputation. I am familiar with Greco and Hibbert. Thinking about it carefully, in the eyes of outsiders, he and Audrey are really a good match. Thinking of Hibbert's previous performance, he may not have had the idea of getting closer to Audrey. What were you thinking? There was an audience standing next to you. Hester quickly suppressed these messy thoughts and led Audrey to the study on the second floor. This time, the personal maid did not guard the door, but stood behind Audrey, looking at Hester from time to time. The two briefly chatted for a few words, and then brought the topic to Russell's diary. In order to show his sincerity, Hester pulled out the top 3 sheets from the pile of Russell's diaries in the drawer. One of them was the Russell's diary that he specially copied. This is the crystallization of knowledge left by Emperor Russell. It has survived through the years. Just by touching it, you can sense the context of that era. Audrey tried her best to use words of praise to express her love for Russell. While staring at the 3 Russell diaries carefully, he silently memorized the contents in his mind. Asta didn't bother and let Audrey pluck her wool. He believed that with Miss Audrey's generosity, she would not keep prostituted to him in vain. After confirming that she had completely memorized the 3 Russell diaries, Audrey raised her head and said sheepishly, "I was fascinated by them for a while. Many people say that the manuscripts left by Emperor Russell have magical powers that will make people unable to extricate themselves from studying them." Asta gave Audrey a way out. Audrey smiled and said, "Yes, I think so too. I can't understand them, but I just want to study the meaning of each symbol. This is also the original intention of my doing this job. Great, I also want to try to decipher these mysterious texts." Audrey paused and said, "Are there other Russell diaries? Can I buy a few to study?" Asta didn't answer immediately, but just looked at Audrey, feeling a lot of emotion in his heart. "Miss Audrey, you are going to get my first 3 Russell diaries for free. You have learned bad things. You are so rich, why don't you just throw gold pounds at me? Is my request too much?" Audrey's eyes evaded slightly, feeling a little guilty. "No, I'm just happy to have suddenly found a like-minded partner." Asta still chose to compromise. He couldn't not sell the Russell diary to Audrey, right? So that's how it is. Audrey breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Mr. Asta didn't see that she had taken advantage of him. "I don't have many original manuscripts of Emperor Russell here. I can only sell you 2 for research. When I collect more, we can study together later." This time, Asta didn't dare to pretend to be generous and say that he would give it to Audrey. If Audrey really accepted it, she would lose hundreds of gold pounds. Audrey smiled and said, "I can buy it at a price of 100 gold pounds per copy." 100 gold pounds per copy. This is the price she thinks is more appropriate. After all, Mr. Asta only spent 50 gold pounds per copy from Furs and Ms. Shu. A simple resale can earn back double the profit. For Mr. Asta, who is currently in financial difficulties, it is also a considerable income, right? Asta sighed and said, "I have always had a high respect for Emperor Roussel. What he left behind, even if it is just a piece of paper, has extraordinary meaning to me." Audrey was stunned for a while, thought about it, and understood the meaning of Asta's words. The Roussel diary is very precious to him and has extraordinary significance. You can buy it, but you have to pay extra. Is Mr. Asta's financial situation so severe? How pitiful. I can understand this feeling. I am also an admirer of Emperor Roussel and have always wanted to collect things he left behind, even if it is just a piece of paper. Audrey said, doubling the price of each Roussel diary to 200 gold pounds. In this case, these 2 Roussel diaries will be given to Miss Audrey for collection. Asta agreed to the deal and did not raise the price. In order to show his generosity, he also gave Audrey the 3 Roussel diaries he had taken out. Thank you. Audrey did not feel happy at all, but a little angry. If she had known that these 3 Roussel diaries would be given to her for free, she would not have had to memorize them so hard just now. Memorizing such symbols is very hard, and when she memorized them, it was 3 full pages. Honesty is really a very beautiful character. Audrey sighed sincerely in her heart. The transaction was over. Hasta received 400 gold pounds, and Audrey received 5 Roussel diaries. Both parties seemed satisfied with the transaction. The two chatted for a while, and Audrey got up and left. Staying too long in the home of an unmarried baron can easily lead to bad rumors. Audrey, who has always been the focus of attention, knows this very well. This is why she waited 3 days before visiting Hasta. When those noble ladies are free, they like to discuss these things behind their backs. After sending Audrey away, Hasta returned to the study and counted the 400 gold pounds he had just earned from Audrey. During this period, he entrusted Zio and 4C to search for Russell's diary, and obtained a total of 6 diaries, each worth 50 gold pounds, with a total expenditure of 300 gold pounds. Now, he has earned another 400 gold pounds from Audrey, which adds up to a net profit of 100 gold pounds. Although it's not much, if he doesn't lose money, he has already made money. Or is Miss Audrey so generous? That look in her eyes when she left at the end seemed to be full of pity and pity. Asta thought about it carefully and felt that it was probably his illusion. After checking the time, it was almost evening and I had no intention of going out. The next day, Hasta took a carriage at around 8 o'clock and headed to the place where Will Accepton lived. During this time, he had been fed ice cream many times, and he had a tacit agreement not to appear near Will. But except for his first dream, Will never came to see him again. This made him understand that he needed to take the initiative to find Will. Otherwise Will would pretend that nothing happened and then happily taste the ice cream he had specially prepared. He was worrying about his fate, but Will was enjoying delicious food at home. This was absolutely intolerable. Will lives in the south area of Dachau. Both his parents are workers in a nearby factory. The salary is decent and he can take 2 days off every month. This is already a good condition. Bridge South District. Will sat in front of the windowsill of the bedroom on the 2nd floor, folding paper cranes slowly. He likes this paper crane invented by Emperor Russell very much. It is very easy to fold and relieve stress. To him, most people are like paper cranes in the face of fate, which can be folded by those who are willing to do so. But there is always a paper crane that will suddenly undergo a mutation, causing the paper crane to activate, break through the paper body, and become a cloud crane that truly soars into the sky. He doesn't know where Yunhee will end up, whether it's good or bad. After all, he still can't fully understand his fate. When a carriage slowly passed under the window sill and stopped in front of his house, Will strung the newly folded paper cranes on the wind chime. Sighing, he stood up and walked out of the bedroom, went downstairs and opened the door to greet the guests. Of course he can avoid visiting guests in advance, but he can't avoid them every time. That would make him look too ruthless, and the ice cream is really delicious. Opening the door, Will showed a sweet and innocent smile. "Excuse me, what are the guests doing at my house?" "Want to find someone to chat with. Then come in." When Will glanced at Haster's empty hands, his face fell, and he said resentfully, "When visiting others, shouldn't you bring some gifts? The best ice cream is eaten in store. Distinguished guests, please come in." Will had a cute smile on his face again. Haster came in. Will closed the door and invited Haster to sit on the sofa. He was holding a toy bear, sitting opposite Haster, lowering his head and playing with the furry hands and feet of the toy bear, without any intention of speaking on his own initiative. Asta smiled and said, "When guests come to visit, shouldn't they prepare some tea and snacks?" "I didn't invite you here," Will mumbled with his mouth slightly flattened. "But you didn't choose to avoid me this time." "Well." Will sighed, looked up at Haster, frowned and said, "I really don't want to see you now. If I can avoid it, I will convince my parents to move earlier." "With your ability, why can't you avoid it? Destinies are always interconnected. Even if I can avoid them every time, my destiny has already changed. Does this level of interference with fate also work for you?" Will stared at Haster for a long time, his little eyes watery, and said aggrievedly, "Do you think you are an ordinary person? Do you bring only a little bit of interference to destiny?" Regarding this issue, Haster still has some ideas. If he was just an ordinary person, he would not need to come to this Mercury snake to talk about his fate. "Look, you know that you are in trouble, and you still want to bring trouble to me." Will hugged the teddy bear tightly, feeling even more aggrieved. "Well, what I bring may not necessarily be trouble, but may also be a miracle of fate," Asta boasted a little. Will did not refute this time. Haster could indeed affect his destiny. If it would only bring trouble, then he would never let Haster find him. "Look, you yourself know that you need my help, so we can help each other to achieve a win-win situation." Haster returned the sentence just now. Will hummed softly. "I am at the end of my destiny. How can you help me?" "If you tell me, I might be able to help you. My destiny does not lie with you. On the contrary, your arrival will disrupt my original destiny. When fortune improves, it always has to go through the downturn first. What if the trough turns into an abyss? I don't want to be swallowed up by fate." Haster can't even see his own destiny, let alone guarantee Will's. Perhaps as Will feared, he helped himself, but would be implicated in his own fate and thus be swallowed up by fate. Asta didn't speak for a long time. Will secretly looked up and glanced at Asta. Seeing that he was a little depressed, he cleared his throat and said, "Of course, your arrival is still a little helpful to me." "What help?" Will rubbed the head of the toy bear, and after a long time, he said, "I have been thinking about one thing recently, and it is difficult to make a decision, especially when you appear." "Tell me about it." Will looked at his left leg, hesitated for a while, and said, "There are some problems with my left leg. In the future, I will need to amputate my left leg for surgery and then die on the operating table. I can interfere with this fate, but I think it's better to let it go. After all, this is the destiny principle I have always believed in. But I'm afraid of missing something because of this." Asta narrowed his eyes slightly. He could really give Will a suggestion on this issue, but he didn't give his suggestion immediately. "What are you afraid of missing?" "I don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't be so entangled." Will showed a distressed expression. Maybe it's good to let it go. Will's face was serious, and he said in a deep voice, "Is this your suggestion?" Asta shook his head and said, "No, my suggestion is to change this fate, maintain the current situation, and then stay in Backland to wait for your destiny. If he follows the original trajectory, Will, who is reincarnated again, will miss the most important destiny because his body has not yet grown fully. Maintaining the status quo, at his current age of less than 10 years old, when the opportunity of destiny comes, he can just grow into a young man. This is the best golden time. It is also the most suitable destiny for him. Can you peek into my future?" Will's face was full of shock. He could only vaguely know that Hasta could bring about changes in his destiny. But he didn't expect Hasta to be able to peek into his destiny. And gave him an extremely affirmative suggestion on this matter. Asta reached out and stroked Will's little head, and whispered, "This suggestion I gave you also changed your future destiny." At this moment, Will seemed to be able to feel that the fog of destiny that could not be peaked was dispersing, and his future had new changes. A change for the better. Being able to cause such a degree of fluctuation in fate, it can be seen how great the change in his fate has been brought by the advice Hasta just said. Will stood up and said sincerely, "Thank you for your advice." Hasta laughed and said in a rather divine way, "This is the guidance of fate." Thank fate. Will's face was full of smiles and he was in a very happy mood. At this point in fate, just this simple sentence may be better than his efforts for thousands of years. Fate is so magical. After solving his own problems, Will, who owed a great favor, said frankly, "What do you want to know?" "Tell me about my father Voltaire first. You are really rare and good." Will looked at Hasta in surprise. He thought Hasta would be eager to ask about his own fate, but he didn't expect that he would ask about Voltaire's fate. People who know how to restrain themselves in front of fate can go further in fate. Your father Voltaire was indeed a gambler with bad luck. Those extraordinary people with hidden destiny were more of spectators in his gambling career. His luck does not need to be guided or cursed. He finally slipped and fell into the river because of his luck. There is no extraordinary factor in it. Asta frowned slightly when he heard this and said, "Is he born with bad luck?" He didn't quite believe that a person's gambling luck would be that bad. If he wasn't cursed by an extraordinary person with destiny, how could he be so unlucky? He almost lost all the family property. Will didn't answer immediately, but looked at Asta for a long time, and said faintly, "No. His luck and his destiny changed when you were born." This sentence made Hasta instantly feel creepy, his whole body stiffened, and a cold feeling crawled all over his back. He really didn't expect that he was the originator of Voltaire's bad luck in gambling. No, not him. But the original owner. When he was born, he had not yet traveled to the mysterious world and brought about all changes. The person who changed Voltaire's luck and destiny was the original owner. The original owner had been complaining that Voltaire had lost the family fortune by gambling, and was even mad at his mother, but in the end, the root cause of everything was himself. What kind of fatherly kindness and filial piety is this? The name of the original owner, Hasta, was probably filled with destiny from the beginning of his birth. Could it be that the original owner died and was replaced by himself because he could not bear his fate? But why should I bear this fate? Asta's throat was hoarse and he said, "Why do you know so much about Voltaire's life?" "When you were born, your destiny changed. It was only then that I noticed you. As for Voltaire, I just observed it casually." Will waved his hand again and said, "There are so many babies born every day in Backland. If it weren't for fate, I wouldn't have the leisure to observe a newly born baby." "Then what fate do I carry?" I don't know." Will thought for a moment and then added, "I don't dare to pry, for fear of being affected by the fate you carry." "Does Aurelius also know that there is something unusual about my fate?" That stupid snake didn't know that he was not in Backland at that time. Only I who was in Backland could feel the subtle changes in fate up close. Will's mood became even happier when he mentioned Aurelius. He and Aurelius had been playing a hide-and-seek game for an unknown amount of time. He usually hid while Aurelius chased him. Now, hiding in Backland, he knew the change of fate earlier. And that stupid snake is probably still staying with the true creator and being a good baby. In this game of destiny, he has already taken the initiative. If he meets me, will he notice anything unusual about me? We meet face to face, not from a distance. Why? There is something about you that can hide your destiny. If I hadn't paid attention to you when you were born, I wouldn't have been able to detect your abnormality. After clearing up some doubts, Hastur's heavy heart became much lighter. Are those destiny extraordinaries hiding in the dark your subordinates or members of the Aurora Society? Neither. Just a group of ordinary extraordinary people? No, Will denied Hastur's speculation one after another, and then said solemnly, they claim to be monks in yellow. The monk in yellow? Asta recited it silently twice. The expression on his face instantly froze, his mouth was dry, and his whole body was filled with a biting chill. If before, he only suspected that he had a connection with the king in yellow. Now, he has confirmed that Hasta Campbell does have a fateful connection with the king in yellow, and this connection is very deep. Not only fate, but also life and soul are all connected. Because the monks in yellow are the believers in Hasta, what they call themselves. Hasta still refused to give up and asked, what are the characteristics of these yellow monks? They like to wear yellow clothes, and they often have a yellow mark engraved on the back of their hands. As for the other things, I don't know very well. Those guys are very cunning, and I suspect they are not simply destiny path extraordinaries. I don't want to get into too much trouble. Will spread his hands for the last time, indicating that there was only so much information he knew. Haha, this little information is enough. He likes to wear yellow clothes and chase the yellow seal. He is definitely a believer of the king in yellow. They are indeed not simply a path of destiny, and the path they are on does not belong to the 22 extraordinary paths today. But it comes from the outer god path where the king in yellow is. Destiny abilities are only part of this path, and may not even be the main extraordinary ability. Asta was silent for a long time, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. This was good, it was clear, and he would save himself from guessing and wasting brain cells. Do you know the yellow monk? Seeing Hastur's expression was different, Will cast a curious look. There is some understanding. It seems that you have a deep destiny bond with them. It's really deep. They were so entangled that they could hardly tell who was who. You had to be careful, that group of people gave me a bad feeling. I will. Hastur smiled and did not discuss the issue further. Anything else you want to ask? Will gave Hastur a look, indicating that he could ask the most critical question. Regarding his own fate, he no longer needs to ask Will. And the information Will knows may not be as good as him. Hastur thought for a moment and said, did you know that something fell from the depths of the starry sky? Just a little bit. Will said with a solemn expression. Something once fell from the depths of the starry sky, and the place it landed was in Backland. This is why I know about it. But when the thing arrived in Backland, there was no trace at all, and I couldn't figure out where it was. Even if it appears in front of me now, I'm afraid I won't be able to recognize it. Will stared at Hastur's eyes and told Hastur his true thoughts clearly. The gift from the starry sky, Hastur's abnormal birth, both took place in Backland, and they are all related to fate. It is hard not to connect the two. If Hastur didn't know that the golden box had not been opened, he would definitely suspect that the thing was on him, and even guess that the thing was the Hall of Stars. But he was sure that the thing in the golden box was definitely not the Hall of Stars. If the king in yellow had the Hall of Stars, would he still need to send things across the starry sky? With the ability of the Hall of Stars, it is possible to bypass the initial barrier and do some extraordinary things. The group of extraordinary people who call themselves the Yellow Monks, they gathered in Backland only after that thing came. Will reminded Hastur again, so that he could be prepared. Do you know what that thing looks like? I don't know. Will smiled awkwardly and whispered, I just had a feeling. I didn't see it with my own eyes, and I didn't dare to pry into the relevant matters rashly. It turned out that even Will, the darling of destiny, didn't know that the thing was the golden box. Asta looked up at the ceiling and whispered, everything in Backland is watched by the gods. Can they know all this? Will lowered his voice and said, except for the night, which may be aware of it, it is difficult for other beings to know. That is something that belongs to destiny, and they don't have the authority of destiny. Plus, they are far away from Backland. In this regard, they are not as good as me. Will is still quite proud of this. For the existence of his level, the gods need to be vigilant, but it is no longer something that cannot be discussed. Why is it only the night that can be aware of it? Asta was very curious. This goddess of the night seemed to be one step ahead of others in many aspects. Because his eyes have been looking at this place. Will gave his own answer. Although you are special, you should not delve too much into this aspect, or you may easily run into danger. Will reminded him, so that Hastur would not continue to ask questions about the goddess of night. With his current strength of sequence 8, he still has a long way to go before he can become a god. The more he knows in advance, the more dangerous it is. I will pay attention to it. Asta has always paid attention to this aspect. Only when he arrives at the Hall of Stars will he think about the level of gods. Today, he was a little bolder because Will was here. Is there anything else you want to know? Will planned to answer Hastur's questions at once, so that he would not bother him all the time. It is enough to meet once for destiny. Meeting too many times can easily cause a chain reaction of destiny. It is safer to meet in a dream, otherwise a nobleman who often comes here will easily arouse suspicion from others. No problem for the time being. That's good. Knowing when to stop is a good virtue. Will was very satisfied with Hastur's answer, which could save him a lot of words and time. He stood up, put the toy bear on the sofa, came to the door, and urged, hurry up and leave. Are you going to send me away now? Didn't you say you would treat me to ice cream? Didn't you say it's not a good thing to stay with me? The ice cream is an exception. Asta smiled and stood up, led Will out and got on the carriage. Under the influence of Will's extraordinary ability, the coachman did not notice that there was an extra child on the carriage. In his destiny, he would not have any intersection with the little boy Will Osepton. Not before, not now, and not in the future. Will, who was ready to make a lot of money, asked Asta to go to Queens as soon as he got on the car. That place was full of nobles, and the ice cream sold in the shops was the best. His parents usually only took him to the East District. The ice cream in the East District tasted average, far less delicious than the ice cream sent by Asta. Asta naturally did not refuse Will's small request. After all, raising a mercury snake is also a very interesting thing. How much can a mere ice cream cost him? But the facts proved that he was wrong, and he was wrong in a very outrageous way. Ice cream looks like a small portion, but a portion of ice cream sold in a big store costs several soldi. The more luxurious ones are even calculated in gold pounds. Will is small and thin, but when it comes to ice cream, he only eats expensive ones, and one after another. His stomach seems to be a bottomless pit. He eats a lot, but it doesn't swell. I haven't eaten so happily for a long time. Will held a portion of ice cream in each hand, licking it while closing his eyes comfortably, feeling very happy. Asta advised politely. Children's stomachs are prone to catching cold, and eating too much ice cream is not good for your physical development. I'm not an ordinary child. Don't you want to follow the flow and be an ordinary child? Occasionally, you need to give yourself a break. While talking, Will had finished 2 ice creams worth 10 souls and 6 pence in his hand, and pulled Asta to another ice cream shop. Asta followed silently behind him, ready to pay. Seeing that Will was eating happily, he also bought an ice cream for himself. He couldn't pay for it and watch it eagerly. Will came over and asked, "How does it taste? I think this strawberry ice cream is better." "The chocolate one is better. This strawberry is too sweet. It's a bit greasy if you eat too much. The chocolate one is a bit bitter and not delicious. Bitter first and sweet later. Only with the stimulation of bitterness can the sweetness be more prominent and more fragrant." Asta seriously discussed with Will which ice cream was better. A big and a small one walked on the street, just like a father with his son. Whenever passers-by cast such a look, Hasta would always smile kindly. Will curled his lips and disagreed. Who stipulated that 2 people, one big and one small, must be father and son? Couldn't it be the snake of destiny and his full-time breeder? When they passed by a newly opened restaurant, Will stopped and walked to Hasta. He lowered his voice and said, "Bernadette is here too, be careful." "Bernadette is here too? This is really fate. Backland is still very big. Even Queens is not small. It can only be described as fate to meet on the street. Can she find you? She will only treat me as an ordinary child unless I want her to know." Will licked the ice cream again, with a faint smile on his little face. Bernadette carries the Wheel of Fortune card, which is the tarot card of the Path of Destiny, which should automatically belong to him and the stupid snake. But in order to protect Bernadette, Roussel deliberately left this card to her to protect her destiny. Bernadette herself is not an extraordinary person in the Path of Destiny, and the effect she can play is limited. She is still a long way from him. Then pretend that you didn't find her. Asta understood, so he didn't have any scruples and took Will directly into the newly opened restaurant. If he turned around and left directly, it would be more likely to arouse Bernadette's suspicion. After entering the restaurant, the 2 found a table to sit down. Will stood up, flipped through the menu, and ordered every ice cream on it. Asta only ordered a drink for himself. He didn't have as good an appetite as Will. Not long after the 2 sat down, Bernadette came to Asta and Will like a breeze without disturbing others. She looked at Asta with interest. Logically, "I shouldn't meet you often." Asta thought for a while and said, "This is fate. It's not just fate, there may be something special about you." Bernadette's tone was flat, her eyes were like lightning, and the whole person was full of a sense of impending storm. Will smiled sweetly and said, "This big sister is so beautiful." A compliment made Bernadette's aura disappear a lot. Bernadette deliberately teased, "Is this little boy your son?" Asta didn't explain. Anyway, he didn't suffer any loss with this title. Will smiled sweetly and asked innocently, "Big sister, can you be my mother? Then we will be a family of 3. Bernadette and Asta were shocked by this sentence at the same time. Bernadette didn't expect that the little boy in front of her would suddenly say such a sentence. "Be a mother? Does she look very old?" Asta admired Will's thick skin. He really deserves to be a person who has lived for countless years. On this issue, he can still say it lightly, without any embarrassment. "Kid, you and him are not father and son, do you think I can't see it? He is my big brother, otherwise, big sister, you can be my sister-in-law." Will's watery eyes lit up, full of hope. Ahem. Asta coughed twice, signaling Will not to talk nonsense anymore. He really couldn't stand it. He could see that Will was having a lot of fun now, relying on his status as a child, making fun of him and Bernadette as much as possible. Even if Bernadette got angry about this, she would only settle accounts with him, not with a child like Will who said nothing wrong. Bernadette smiled lightly, but didn't get angry about it. She flicked Will's head with her fingers and said, "Do you talk like this every time you see a beautiful sister?" "No, I just think you and Big Brother are a good match. Didn't you just talk about fate? Will covered his head and took a small step back, revealing an innocent look. Bernadette did not discuss this topic with Will again, and looked at Asta again. If I can meet you for the third time in Backland, then I will be really interested in you. Big sister, I heard from Big brother that the sign that a woman likes a man is that she is interested in this man. Will smiled and put a black and bright black pot on Asta. Asta refuted righteously, nonsense, I didn't say such a thing. Oh. Will lowered his head in frustration, and whispered, Big brother, don't you think Big sister is very beautiful and suitable to be married home as a wife? Asta showed an awkward but polite smile, and said with a smile, children always like to say some nonsense. Bernadette ignored such words, and the whole person disappeared like a wisp of light smoke. After confirming that Bernadette had left, Asta stretched out his hands and pinched Will's little face, rubbed it twice, and said viciously, you little brat have really grown up. Didn't you think it was interesting just now? Quote. Speaking of which, Bernadette is also a person favored by fate. If you can really marry her, maybe you can even become a Black Emperor. Don't worry about it anymore, eat your ice cream quickly, it's almost melted. I made this judgment based on fate, and it is based on fate. Will grumbled in dissatisfaction, and then fought with the 7 or 8 ice creams in front of him. Asta returned home at more than 7 o'clock in the evening, mainly because Will's home was a little far from here. He had to send Will to the South Bridge district, and then return to Queens. The time on the road alone had to be calculated in hours. Fortunately, it was not in vain. Before leaving, Will gave him 1,000 paper cranes to contact in his dreams. He felt that 1,000 paper cranes was not enough, so he took a string directly, which should be more than a dozen. On the way back, he spent 1 solely and 3 pence to buy an ordinary wind chime. It was just right to hang this string of paper cranes on it. Not to mention, Will's craftsmanship is really good. Carrying the wind chime upstairs, Asta hung it on the windowsill of the study. The bedroom is a place to rest, and he doesn't want Will to observe his sleeping posture through the paper cranes. And hanging it on the windowsill, if Mr. A comes to knock on the window to visit again in the future, the first person to be alarmed is Will. After doing these things, Asta came to the Hall of Stars, sat at the long table, and materialized paper and pen to organize the content of today's chat with Will. This conversation solved many of his doubts, such as Voltaire's problem, the connection between the golden box and the yellow monks and the yellow cane. Now the most threatening thing to him is the organization of the yellow monks. Believe in the yellow king and walk on the outer god path outside the 22 extraordinary paths. No matter from which aspect, it is something worth being vigilant about. Should we report this organization to the Church of the Seven Gods? Asta thought for a while and gave up the idea. The yellow monk hadn't done anything yet. And the relationship between him and the Yellow King was more like the true creator and Adam. The true creator and Adam? Humanity and divinity? The more Hasta thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was very high, but he also felt that something was wrong. If he really was the human nature of the Yellow King, he would at least be a true god now, right? How could he still be at sequence 8? Relying only on his own human nature. The Yellow King would have long been trapped in eternal madness and chaos, and it would be impossible for him to stay awake like Adam. Moreover, the name Hasta Campbell belonged to the original owner. Even if there was any fate, it was the original owner who should bear it. What did it have to do with him? Hasta thought about it for a long time, but still felt that this guess was unreliable. The situation between the true creator and Adam was rare, otherwise the 7 gods would not be unaware of it. Because chaos and madness are normal, and the separation of divinity and humanity is abnormal and anomaly. Thinking of the true creator, Hasta felt curious and wanted to take a peek. What does the true creator do every day? It feels like his figure is everywhere, but it seems that there is not much sense of existence. Adam can come out and walk around freely, but he seems to have never really left the house, right? I don't know how the human nature of the real creator is reflected, and how he plays a tender father-son relationship with Ouroboros. This is seriously inconsistent with the style of the Aurora Club. After thinking for a while, Hasta gave up thinking about the real creator. Instead, he focused his mind on the Yellow Monks. This group of devout believers who believe in the Yellow King have been hiding in the dark. What fate are they waiting for? Or should I say, what kind of fate do they want? Could Andrew, who came to his house rashly to defraud before, be a pawn they deliberately pushed out? Otherwise, Andrew is not even Sequence 9, how could he know about the golden box? That is something that even Will, the snake of fate, cannot spy on. Maybe Andrew was deliberately pushed out by them to punish themselves. They should want to use Andrew's incident to tell themselves that the golden box exists, and only people related to fate can get it. If it were the original owner, in order to revive his mother's paranoia, he would definitely find the golden box, open it, and use the things hidden inside. Is this what the Yellow Monks are looking forward to? But they didn't expect that they were too cautious. Not only did they not look for the golden box, but they also deliberately ignored the existence of the golden box. Even when they moved to a new house, they deliberately put the things on the third floor of the old house and didn't touch it. So they deliberately wrapped the golden box as a gift and gave it to themselves. But how did they get the golden box? Isn't it said that only people related to fate can see its existence? Maybe it's because the king in yellow gave them different powers. Asta deduced carefully and felt that this was a more logical sequence of actions. Then the purpose of the Yellow Monks was clear. They were waiting for their fate to open the golden box. Is it possible that the king in yellow will come as long as the golden box is opened? As a devout believer of him, it is very likely that he would do such a series of things for his own beliefs. After thinking for a long time, Hasta's thoughts jumped to Hasta and the Yellow King. In his mystical knowledge, Hasta is not the same as the Yellow King. The Yellow King is just an incarnation of Hasta playing in the human world, and Hasta is the real outer god of the old days. In addition to the Yellow King, he also has other avatars, such as the more well-known faraway Feasterer and Emerald Llama. The god believed by the Yellow Monk is Hasta himself, not the incarnation of the Yellow King. But this is the mystical knowledge he knows, which is not the same as it is in the mysterious world. Perhaps in this mysterious world, Hasta is the Yellow King, and he has only this identity. The god believed by the Yellow Monk is not Hasta, but the Yellow King. Hasta felt a little pity. If the god believed by the Yellow Monk is Hasta himself, then he can at least be a god in the Yellow Monk organization under the name of Hasta. Maybe he can become the leader of an organization, an evil leader or something like that. As long as they don't come out to target me, I'll wait until I become stronger and then deal with them. Asta still thinks that he should put his own strength first, with his current speed of digesting potions. In about 10 days, the barbarian potion will be completely digested. Try to get it before the next gathering of the stars, then he can give the lamp god a little shock in person. Asta thought about a lot of things again, and then left the Hall of Stars and lay on the bed to sleep. In the morning, Asta had breakfast and went to the Gordon Club for training as usual. It was still the regular two-piece set, fighting and firearms. After enjoying a free lunch at the club, he did not go directly to the law firm as usual, but returned to the West District and went to the police station. He wanted to find Andrew to confirm his guess and see if Andrew was deliberately pushed out by the group of Yellow Monks to attract his attention. Arriving at the police station, Asta directly asked the police officer on duty to ask Sheriff Reed. In this police station, he was only familiar with Sheriff Reed. After all, they had dealt with each other several times. I even treated him to a meal last time. Baron Campbell, why are you here? A police officer who had once had a meal with Chief Reed found Hasta and trotted over with a happy face. "I heard someone said that you arrested the fraudster Andrew. I happened to pass by today, so I walked in to take a look and asked about the specific situation." Hasta behaved very kindly and did not mention that he was the one who hung Andrew above the drain in the first place. The police officer looked embarrassed, looked around, pulled Hasta to the outside of the police station, and found a corner where no one had passed. He lowered his voice and said, "The fraudster named Andrew died in prison more than half a month ago." "Died?" Hasta was surprised, but not very surprised. If there is a special reason for Andrew's death, then his guess can be confirmed. Andrew was pushed out to attract his attention, and his death was most likely caused by the group of monks in yellow. A thumbtack happened to be accidentally put into the water he drank that day. When he drank the water, the thumbtack got stuck in his throat and cut his throat. He died not long after. The police officers carefully reconstructed the specific details of Andrew's death for Hasta. "It's such a tragedy." Hasta sighed with emotion, already determined in his heart that there should be extraordinary factors in Andrew's death. He didn't believe there were so many coincidences. With the power that those yellow-robed monks had, it was too easy to kill a prisoner in prison. Extortion and even planning to steal a nobleman should have been sentenced to death for his crime. Dying like this may be the goddess's last mercy for him. It's a life after all. Hasta showed a look of shameless compassion. The police officer sighed. Yes, but who told him not to take the right path? Before leaving, Hasta casually asked about Chief Reed's current situation. Only in this way can he show that he values Chief Reed more, and it will be easier for him to ask for help in the future. The young police officer sighed, and then said slowly, "Something happened at Chief Reed's house, and he has not come to work at the police station during this time." "What is the specific reason?" Chief Reed's wife was pregnant. This was originally a good thing, but his wife's health became worse and worse after becoming pregnant, which forced Chief Reed to go home to take care of her. "Not feeling well?" "The condition of Chief Reed's wife is not very good. The last time I met him on the street, it was obvious that Chief Reed's face was much haggard and his eyes were dull. It must be because his wife's condition has not improved." "So." The young police officer said a lot about Chief Reed's current situation in person. In the police station, Chief Reed may not be the best performing sergeant, but he is definitely the most popular among these young police officers. Every time he goes on a mission, he will try his best to give opportunities to young police officers, allowing them to take action at critical moments and earn plenty of flowers and applause. When dealing with older police officers, he would ask them to do as easy a job as possible. When there was danger, he would go first. For young police officers, Chief Reed is a boss with few faults. If Chief Reed needs it, I can introduce him to a doctor with excellent medical skills. "Thank you for your kindness, Baron Campbell. You are really a good person, unlike other nobles." The young police officer was very happy. He just said so much just because he wanted to ask Hasta to lend a helping hand to Chief Reed. But he knew that this kind of thing couldn't be forced directly, so he told the truth about Andrew. After all, Andrew's death in prison was not a glorious thing for the police department. Hasta asked Sheriff Reed where he lived and then left. After returning, he asked Butler Neal to arrange for a doctor to go over and see if he could help.